Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another Northbasics video on this channel. This time we're going to talk about consumption in Northgard, and I sadly have to confess to you that I lied to you in the food and wood tutorial. Because the consumption numbers I showed there were more like rough estimations. I actually wasn't aware that the consumption system of Northgard is as deep as it is. So in this video I want to clear the fog and tell you everything about food and wood consumption in Northgard and what I have learned researching this topic. Now enjoy the ride and let's jump into it. Food production in Northgard is essentially static, so an unupgraded farmer will produce +5 food in summer, and it doesn't matter how many villagers you have, what year it is, and so on. So one could assume that the food and wood consumption of villagers would also be static and that there is a set amount of food a villager will consume and it doesn't change throughout the game. That, however, is incorrect, and the amount of consumption will actually rise with every single villager you add to your population. To make it clearer, when you only have one villager in your population, it will consume 1.26 food per tick. If you end up with a population of 20, each of your villagers will consume 1.83 food per tick. This is quite a substantial rise, and it is caused by every single villager consuming a tiny bit more food than the last. The formula to calculate the production of a single villager looks like this, where x is the amount of population you currently have. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize or use this formula in-game. This is just for the people that want to calculate it themselves. For all the other ones, this is the graph that results from the function we just saw. On the lower axis, we see the amount of population in the current moment, and on the left axis, we see the food consumption per villager per tick. From the curve we can see that at the start of the game, this consumption will go up relatively steep, and then it will proceed going up less and less, resulting in a slower rise of food consumption. If we take the example from before now, we can see that a single villager will have a consumption of 1.26, and when we go up to 20 villagers, it will rise up to 1.83. The difference between that is 0.57 production per villager per tick. Let's compare that to a situation a bit further up the chart. So if we have 21 villagers, we end up at a consumption of 1.84, and at 40 villagers we will have a consumption of 2.13. The difference between these two is only 0.29. That's almost half of the consumption rise we saw in the example before. So you can see that this effect will be slower and slower the higher your total population rises. What we learned from all this is that the more population you have, the better your food economy needs to be. Not only because you end up having more mouths to feed, but these mouths will also get hungrier and hungrier the more villagers you have. A funny extreme example Maxu came up with would be that at 321 villagers, your consumption per villager per tick will go to 4.004. And since villagers will only produce +4 food, you will start starving in the summertime, since your villagers would not be able to feed themselves anymore. And let's be honest here. Who of us wasn't in this situation already? Daily occurrence for me. For the wood consumption, it looks very similar. The formula would be this one. Yet again, with x being the amount of population, you want to calculate the amount of wood consumption per villager per tick 4. And this would be the graph for the wood consumption per villager per tick in the summertime. Let's take the same example as before and look at the consumption when you would have only one villager. The consumption would be 0.06 for that single villager per tick. At a population of 20, this would be 0.15 consumption per villager. So it starts and rises at a way slower rate than it does for food consumption. But all other things still apply. So this effect will rise your consumption faster at low population numbers and will get slower and slower the higher your total population gets. But it will always keep rising, forcing you to have a better wood production with rising population to fulfill the needs of your villagers. While this is usually not as big of a problem, since you will need a lot of wood to upgrade your buildings, build new ones and all that good stuff. The longer the game goes on, the less you will need to do those things, usually resulting in you slowing down your wood production. So as the consumption rises, you can just use the freed spots in your woodcutters lodges that should usually be still around. What makes wood special compared to food is that the wood consumption will change with winters and blizzards, changing the consumption how we can see on these graphs. The blue one is the summer consumption of villagers we just talked about. The red one is the consumption in normal winters, which will be 2 times as high as in the summer times. And the green one is the consumption in blizzards, which will be 4 times as high as your summer consumption. So your food production will suffer through blizzards, making them as tough as they are, while for wood it will be the drastically rising consumption putting you to the test. That was a pretty complicated topic, but in the end, the most important takeaways are: food and wood consumption will constantly be rising if you are growing your population, which forces you to improve it all along the way. This effect will be rather fast in the early game and slow down the higher your population actually gets. The food consumption will be the same throughout the year and blizzards, while wood consumption will double throughout the winter and even quadruple throughout blizzards. If you remember these 3 things, you will be good to go. While I think it is helpful to understand the whole mechanic, it is obviously not necessary to win games in Northgard. And with this, we're coming to the end of this little video. If you got any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. When you enjoyed this little deep dive into the game's mechanics and want to see more videos like this, be sure to leave a like on this video and maybe even subscribe. I definitely had a great time researching for this video, and I want to thank Sanva to lead me to the Northgard Wiki in my quest to find the correct formulas for the calculations, and of course everybody who was involved in the Northgard Wiki, which contains loads of information about our favorite game. I'm gonna leave a link to the wiki in the description below the video if you want to check them out yourself or maybe even participate in this wonderful project. Thanks for all the help and thanks a lot for you watching this video. Make sure to have a wonderful rest of your day and maybe see you back in the next one. Bye bye!